Following the dramatic race in Beijing, where the Peugeot team managed a miraculous 1-2 finish, they were in high spirits going into Tondela, with the team looking to continue their forward momentum after the rough two races of the season. However, they were a little uneasy after seeing how poorly their gearbox was performing under acceleration in Beijing. Their good strategy was the thing that gave them the win in Beijing, along with their strong V12 engine. However, the team also ran a gold livery in practice for the team manager who had their birthday that day, as well as just also to celebrate their 1-2 finish. Practice time showed up the Mercedes and the Ferraris were going to be competitive as normal, along with the Hondas being close behind, although the Alfa Romeos and the Maseratis showed some significantly better pace in practice, along with the CSR team, who had been struggling with their Ilmor badged engines for the beginning of the season. But qualifying would determine whether or not that practice time those practice paces were real. The front row would be led by a Ferrari and a Mercedes once again, although it would be Nilo Sarian claiming pole position ahead of Harry Chapman for Tondela. Wexler would be third, baffled as to how he did so poorly in qualifying, despite qualifying third. The Hondas would lock out row 3 once again, with Vasquez and Lipinen securing row 4 yet again. The Flying Rick de Graaf qualified 9th again for Toyota, showing that he was a talent for the future. Jenny North would be frustrated to start 11th with Anne Olivier in the Renault. Samuel Blanc confirming Alfa Romeo's pace by qualifying 13th, with Iker Vidal 15th in the Maserati, and the Tia's CRS car in a brilliant 16th, the highest he's been for a while. Flores would be frustrated again with 18th place, and both Peugeots would be scratching their heads, wondering why they were so slow, qualifying 20th and 23rd on the grid. And the two Asia road racing cars still unable to find the pace in their cars, having qualified on the second to last row of the grid yet again, as the race looked to be dry going into Sunday morning. The Sunday morning warm-up showed that the Alfa Romeos and the Maseratis still had good pace, but tires could be an interesting gamble, as the hard tire could be used to use a one-stop race, but the soft tires were much quicker, so tire wear and tire strategy would be critical going into the race on Sunday. The race would get underway under clear and sunny skies as the lights went out and Sarian led the field away, with Wexler getting a brilliant start to immediately jump Chapman up into second place, although Chapman tried to fight back in the first sector. The Hondas filed in single file, but at the back, Flores' bad day got even worse as she took out Atia's CRS car into the bargain as well. Both of them having front wing damage and blocking Esteban Ribeiro in the process on their way back to the pit lane at the end of lap 1. The Fords also had gotten great starts. Vasquez had a teammate North in 8th and 9th, but at the further back, Moreno, unaware of where Lundqvist was in the Peugeot, took the Peugeot's front wing off, and she would trundle angrily back to the pit lane to get a new front wing to replace her broken one. As Moreno, with end fence damage, decided to not pit and stayed out, as Lundqvist boiled out of the pit lane in 22nd place, very angry and frustrated, as Peugeot's hopes seemed to lie with Esteban Ribeiro, the only man to start on the hard tire at the beginning of the race, as the field began to settle into single file form, as for Tondela standards. Until a few laps in, Chapman tried to show his pace, closing in on the Ferrari car, but unable to make the move as the tight, twisty Tondela circuit didn't yield a lot of passing, at least in the opening laps of a race, until the tires started to fall off, which usually showed who had good tire wear and who didn't. As the race kept going, Chapman began to try and hold off a very feisty Nino Holtz, locking up his brakes as he desperately tried to hold off his teammate in the sister Mercedes. Holtz took a look, but was unable to make the move, and then began having to fall in line behind her teammate. Meanwhile, at the end of that lap, the flying Richtograph became the now cruising Richtograph, as his gearbox decided to cry enough, and he was out from a very encouraging 11th place. He had lost ground at the start, but assumed it was due to a poor start. But his gearbox had gone, and his day was done for Toyota. Toyota would be wishing for Flores to somehow make her way back at the field. As the cameras began to focus on the battle in the lower points positions between the Fords, the Renaults, and the BMW Maria Gonzalez just ahead of the Fords. As Esteban Ribeiro made Peugeot's come down from their miraculous win even worse, as he buried his Peugeot in the wall at the end of the back straightaway, and he was out. Anybody wanting to use the hard tires now would have to gamble and see if the hards were worth a shot. As Ribeiro being the only one on them, no one else had any other relevant data except for the practice times, which didn't really clue anybody into anything. As Wolfgang Schmidt was continuing to run in 7th place, ignore what I said earlier, ahead of the two Fords. Schmidt was looking to perform well after being shown up by teammate Gonzalez in the previous round, and he did try to show her up by trying to go around the outside of Nikolai Surkov after he had locked his brakes in the final corner and had a bad exit. Unfortunately, the BMW was not able to make the move stick, as the Honda V12 the turbocharged V12 in the Honda told on the straights, as Surkov began leading an angry 5-car queue of cars behind him through the tight and twisty circuit yet again. All that was going on, and just off screen, the two Ferraris tried to employ team orders to allow Wexler past teammate Sarian. Sarian, however, refused, stating over the radio, "Just leave me alone. I know what I'm doing." A classic line from the man known as the Iceman. However, after a couple more laps, Wexler would be on his teammate yet again. However, still could not get by Sarian, who refused to yield. It was quite thrilling stuff and made for excellent drama, as Chapman off screen pitted and came out in 10th place on the medium tire, looking to try to make the race in 2 stops. As the Ferraris began getting tires ready for their man as well. But who would come in first? The answer would be Wexler in second, as he pitted along with Holtz and Sharp as the strategies began to play out. Softs and mediums were the order of the day for all the drivers at the moment, as they were looking to do the race on 2 stops using the medium tires. Although with the tire wear and tire differences, though, getting through the traffic will be key, as Chapman found out to his peril, as Wexler bullied his way past the Mercedes on the inside through the back straight, using the non-stopping Iker Vidal using the Alfa Romeo to pass. As teammate Sarian came in and chose an interesting strategy, putting the hard compound tire on. Coming up behind teammate Wexler wasn't ideal, as Blanc continued to hold up cars in the midfield, along with the Maserati of Iker Vidal, as Sarian would try and do the race on a 1-stop, using the hard tire to the end of the race. Would it pay off though, as the tire differences was very dramatic, as now the front runners are on different strategies. Wexler on a set of softs, the 2 Mercedes on mediums, and Sarian on a set of hards. Until Chapman's gearbox decided to explode and get jammed in 5th gear. The Mercedes was out, and so was the championship lead for Chapman. Now as he trundled back to the pits, being passed by many other cars, he wondered if that could be his championship hopes already falling away. As several laps later, Wolfgang Schmidt's gearbox also couldn't take the heat and gave up. The BMW was also out. a shame for Wolfgang Schmidt, as he had been performing brilliantly and was ahead of and was doing well in the queue of cars led by the Fords. Speaking of the Fords, Javier Vasquez was doing very well, running in a brilliant fifth as the race passed the 1/3 mark, easily able to hold off the Honda of Nikolai Surikov, who was running directly behind them. As Jenny North, who was also doing well after her second pit stop at the halfway mark, easily made her way past the two Maseratis of all things. The Maseratis were quietly making their way through the field with Woodford and Vidal, as Vidal pulled a brilliant move around the outside of his teammate to take 11th place and be in prime position to get points if the strategy's played out. But as things continued, though, two laps later, and only a few after her pit stop, Jenny North's car cried enough as her brakes gave up, as she pulled into the pits to retire the Ford. A disappointment for North, as she had been doing well and was looking to bring the fight to the two Renaults, who were running 6th and 7th behind teammate Vasquez. A shame for them, but the cameras began to focus on the Spaniard of Iker Vidal in the Maserati, running in an excellent 8th place at the moment, having only stopped once and having gone the furthest on the soft compound tires compared to everybody else. He was running a brilliant race in the Maserati, which had been underperforming in the first few rounds of the season. But here on the Tondela circuit, the cars seemed to be flying around the circuit, and Vidal made it look very good indeed. Even putting up a fight against the Honda, the Surikov. Another man doing well was Samuel Blanc in the Alfa Romeo, running in 11th place, with teammate Moreno in 12th behind, despite his earlier incident with Lundqvist. Blanc was also looking to get Alfa Romeo off the board with some points, and running 11th was a good way to do it. If another car failed in front of him, maybe he could get into the points after all and get Alfa Romeo on the board for the season. Both teams, ironically enough, were running flat 6 turbocharged engines, but the power was simply not there for both teams at the moment, as they were both struggling to try and make improvements to their engines. In the case of Alfa Romeo, desperately so to avoid a repeat of their 1980s dalliance with the sport, where things didn't go well at all. As the Ford and Renault battle continued in the pit lane, Vasquez and the Livriera pitting on the same lap as the race continued. Meanwhile, further ahead, Sarian's hard tire gamble had failed. The hards were good, but they weren't very fast. As the softer, grippier tires of Nina Holtz and Zoe Sharp told as they caught up to him at the three-quarters mark and easily overtook the Ferrari to get back into 2nd and 3rd respectively. Sarian was now in a dilemma. Did he pit or did he stay out? And he chose the latter, as the cameras continued to focus on the Spanish-born Iker Vidal, so close to home, racing in Portugal. As Sharp pitted again to try and secure the fastest lap and extra points for her title push. As the two Renaults continued to battle, now for 5th place, having jumped ahead of Javier Vasquez in the final round of stops. While that was going on, directly behind them was Iker Vidal once again performing miracles in the Maserati, running in an excellent 8th place and holding off the Honda of Nikolai Surikov. The Honda had the speed on the straights, but Vidal who was getting brilliant exits. Despite a lockup under the back straight at one point, to stay ahead of the Honda on the straights and be able to pull ahead in the corners. As Hamren's engine exploded in the Asia Road Racing car to cap off a miserable weekend for that team. The team having no luck at the moment, with Hamren 18th at the time of the retirement, and Castley just pitting and being the second to last car on track. As Blanc, who was still 11th, began to put the pressure on Maria Gonzalez to try and pass the BMW to get into the points. Blanc was quicker. Blanc was showing surprisingly good speed on the straight as the Mexican in the BMW was complaining of a lack of grip from her tires, getting worse and worse exits out of corners as the Alfa Romeo began to hound the blue and white BMW. Could Blanc do it though? With less than 10 laps to go, he was going to need to put a charge in to be able to make the move and get the Alfa Romeo to its first points of the season. As Surikov continued to struggle to try and pass the immovable wall that was like a Vidal. Blanc continued trying. With 8 laps to go, he was close, but didn't have enough speed at the end of the back straightaway. 7 to go. Blanc got a better run this time, and in the slipstream of the BMW, he finally did it, bringing the Alfa Romeo up into the points as he braked as late as he dared to make the move stick. But could he hold on to the points? The BMW was a pretty quick car, but could he hold on to the point and get Alfa Romeo on the board at last? As the race wound down, though, it was the race round down with 5 to go. It was pretty elementary for up at the front, but meanwhile, Vidal and the Maserati continued to hold off Surikov's Honda, as Jeremy Woodford crashed out with 4 laps to go in the sister Maserati, causing a couple heart-and-mouth moments for the Spanish crowd who had made the trip over to Portugal. Woodford had complained of a lack of brakes, and he was out of the race. He climbed out of the car, but was very upset at himself, as Vidal continued to hold off Surikov in the closing laps. Something that had escaped notice was Siri Lundqvist in the Peugeot. Despite her early lap incident with Moreno, she was up to a remarkable 13th place despite all the shenanigans. And as the cameras continued to watch Vidal battle with Surikov, she was up at the 13th place and was sniffing around for 12th place against the CRS car. As Vidal continued his miraculous defense in the Maserati, the Renault of Anna Oliveira, who had to make another pit stop due to tires, was now on the back of the Honda, and she began to hound the white and red Honda as the purple and red Maserati began to pull away. But as the race wound down, it was simply a masterclass from Wexler, as he came in to win by over 20 seconds ahead of the competition to take another win on the season and to close in on the championship lead against Sharp. Holtz managed to get a good but quiet second place. Sharp a well-deserved third. Sarin on his one stop finished in a slightly frustrated fourth. Fifth was Aki Lippinen, won the fight for fifth in between the Renaults and the Fords. Vasquez 7th. Vidal finally came home to finish in 7th place, ahead of Oliveira, who had bullied her way by Surikov in the off-screen. But Samuel Blanc would get the disappointment of the day, as he crashed out with only 2 corners to go. On fading brakes and worn-out tires, the Alfa Romeo skidded off the track and into the wall, which, to much Alfa Romeo's horror, promoted Kofi Koro in the CRS Formula car into the final points-paying position on the final lap. Siri Lundqvist would recover to an excellent 11th, but Koro would be the hero of the day, along with Vidal, as the race ended, as we head to the next round.